I'm just waiting for a quorum on the committee members.
We're waiting for one more. His name is Marios, and he's going to be sharing his screen. So.
Oh, right. I remember Mario. Christopher, yeah. I don't know that we've met in this context, but I think the rest of the team has been doing these updates consistently.
Okay, great.
Good evening, everyone.
Hi, Omar. Hi, Gerard.
Good evening, Deb. How you doing?
James, hello.
Hi, Deb. I have Marios on the phone. He says he can't be seen. He's listed as an attendee, not as a panelist.
Oh, no problem. We will get everybody promoted that needs to be. Oh, but he's participating by phone. Is it possible he ends with 697?
I don't know.
No, 309.
No, 30 something.
3069.
3069. He's in his M Philly under attendees. I don't hear her. You're on mute, Debbie. I can't hear you.
Oh, sorry about that. My
No, that's okay.
husband walked in the room to tell me something. Okay. So Chanel, if you can bring M Philly up, MPHILI. Hi, Mary. Okay, let me just do a count. We seem to be down a few people.
Okay, I'm up.
Oh, there's Mario. And hi, Ken. I know you've been around before.
Seems now that I'm up 2 times.
I mean, we're getting some feedback. Is it possible, Mario, that you are connected on Zoom and on your phone, or is it somebody else that's...
No, I hung up my phone.
Huh.
You know that someone is definitely running 2 microphones. What about Ken?
No.
You have a phone on or anything?
No, it's running the computer.
Well, the noise seems to have stopped for now, right?
I think it's Marios.
Well, it's all
for whatever reason. Yeah, Mario's still showing up twice, but
yeah, but that noise is gone so far.
Oh,
yeah.
I think when I speak, it comes up.
Then it's all your fault, obviously.
I'll hang up. All right, it seems like it's better now. No, it's still echoes.
Marios, do you want to drop out and just rejoin?
Oh, hey, his second one just dropped, so I think hopefully we're okay. Although now I feel like I'm echoing.
No,
Right.
You are.
I'm not doing anything. I swear.
let me drop out and I'll rejoin. We'll try rejoin.
Thanks, Mario. All right, so we have Gerard, Jim, Mary, Omar, myself. That is not a quorum. And I was going to actually have Leo Jimenez, new member, take notes tonight, so Omar wouldn't have any to-dos. Let me just scan the attendees.
Yeah, but I'm gonna have to duck a little bit after 8 PM today. I have to go pick my wife up.
The
Okay.
noise is gone at the moment. The echo craziness.
So Jim, what do I do with the, do I have a, like,
I
can we
mean-
not start until we have a quorum? Can we get started, but it's not start our?
Well, we certainly can't vote. Well, technically, okay, we can't approve the agenda. But on the other hand, I don't think any harm is done, and we don't want to waste people's time. But obviously, and you know, we won't technically have a meeting, you know, unless we do have a quorum, which means, among other things, we couldn't vote on anything. But
Right.
you know,
Um,
de facto,
okay,
we
all right.
can go on, I would think.
Right. And you know, Port Authority is going to present first, and that's an update. That's not a resolution item. So I feel comfortable going ahead with that. I'm sorry, this is, oh, there we
Someone
go.
just appeared.
Leo Jimenez is arriving.
Hi, everyone. I'm
Oh.
sorry about the late arrival.
No problem. It's just, we usually, that doesn't matter because we have a quorum, and tonight we're a little,
So does Leo make the
we
quorum?
don't, but it's fine. Leo, would it be possible for you to take notes tonight? I don't mean to just slam you on your first meeting, but if it is a possibility, we'd be grateful.
Yeah, I'll help out. I'll take notes.
Thank you. Or just because Omar won't be here after tonight's his last CB12 meeting for a little while, so I just don't want him to have like to-dos on his list. So I would appreciate that. So I'm going to call the meeting to order at 7:07. Just to go through and introduce the committee members who are here as of now, we have Omar Tejada, myself, Debbie Nabavian, Gerard Dengel, Jim Berlin, Mary Anderson, Leo Jimenez, anybody else arriving? And from CB12 board member, Sally Fishers joined us. And forgive me if I'm not seeing others in the attendees, but I'll keep an eye out. So we have several things on the agenda tonight. I think it's going to be an interesting evening. First up, I guess let me just dispatch with two quick updates of things that just, you know, just for some closure items. DOT did get back to us about, there were 2 city bike stations near Columbia's the fields at the north tip of Manhattan that we were waiting to hear about location. And both of those have been announced and are both sidewalk stations, so not roadbed stations. And secondly, there was an item that had come up several times from several members of the public about the construction and sort of recasting of the intersection at Broadway, Hillside, Nagel, and Bennett. And it does appear that there have been some signal adjustments made at that intersection to give pedestrians a little safer environment and a head start when they're going across Broadway headed towards the park or towards Bennett. So with that, I just, I want to thank again Port Authority, New York, New Jersey and the Restoring the George team for being here tonight. This is obviously a group that's presented to us several times over this massive undertaking over several years. But I know, at least for me, I haven't heard for a while. I don't know if you were here in 2019, but we know that there's been a lot going on the Northern Pathway with the landing at 180th. There's been a lot going on 179th, and obviously a lot going on in the bridge. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Team Port Authority.
All right.
Okay, this is Marius Philly with the Port Authority. I'm the program director. I guess, Chris, if you'd like to introduce yourself, and also Ken.
My name is Chris Lee, Government Relations Department for the Port Authority. Thanks for having us today. We're happy to update you guys and We'll let Marios go through the slide deck with all the updates from the project. And then Ken and I can sit here, we'll take notes, and we'll see what kind of questions you guys have. We'll either answer them on the spot, or we can come back to you guys with some of the answers, okay? Thanks a
That's
lot. Thanks for
great.
having us.
And with that, I think we need to make Mario a co-host. Is that right? So he can share his screen, or is he able, Mario, you're able to do that from where you are?
I think you could do it, right?
Oh, but now Mario is Christopher Lee. Okay. I think it's going to work.
Okay, can
There you go.
everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay, this is the George Washington Bridge 10-year capital plan construction program update to Community Board 12. I believe the last time we came and spoke to you folks was on February 3rd of 2020, where we gave you an update. And we continue with the update. Today's March 1st, 2021. Okay, so what we're looking at over here are the main span projects that we do have. The suspender rope replacement and rehabilitation is the mainstay of the program. The program consists of approximately 11 projects. Some are completed already over in New Jersey. These projects that I'm showing right now do affect the New York side. So the suspender rope replacement and main cable program is basically divided into two sections. It's the north side and the south side. We're currently working on the north side. At the same time, we also have the main span upper level structural steel rehabilitation project phase 2 that is ongoing. We started work on that, and coupled with that, we've got the upper level eastbound main span pavement rehabilitation, and that is going to be trailing the upper level structural steel rehabilitation phase 2 project. And we also have a rehabilitation of the lower level steel, the removal of the lead-based paint, and there's also happens to be some asbestos in some locations in the paint, plus the traveler replacement, which is on the underside of the main span. Those are work platforms that we have had in place since the lower level was added, and as a result, they are approaching their useful life, and we're either going to rehabilitate them or replace them. The plan was to replace them. However, this project has been put on hold due to COVID-19. We did have some certain delays in the project, so that has basically been put on hold for a couple of years. We are looking to restart the program in 3 phases, and we will be doing that. The first phase, we will be rehabilitating the travelers, as I mentioned, and then we'll be performing priority repairs, and finally the balance of the work will be completing, where we will be painting that. Continuing on over in the Washington Heights area, we have the rehabilitation of the 178, 179th Street ramps, plus the bus turnaround ramps, plus all the ramps that are supporting the bus station. That is currently in construction. And at the same time, coupled with that project, we also have the walkways, the north walkway, which is the ADA access and the usage for cyclists as well. We've got on the south side. That ramp is currently also, we started with the substructure with that particular ramp as well, and that is also going to provide access for ADA and also the bicyclists. We have the second project is the TME overpasses, which comprises of six structures. We will be rehabilitating some of the structural elements of the structures, and 2 of the structures will be replacing, providing a new deck and doing some structural improvements and upgrades as well. In addition to that, on the we've got the TME median barriers, which is basically both the local and the express roadways, the upper level, lower level, and what we're doing over there is we're actually replacing the barriers that separate the roadways. Those barriers do not meet current codes and standards, and as a result, we're replacing those, putting in new barriers, and at the same time, the columns that are supporting the structures overhead, the fireproofing has deteriorated, and we're in the process of replacing the fireproofing, and at the same time, that project is working pretty well. These are the standard hours of work that we do have. We have presented this in the past, and as you can see, those are pretty much the no work restrictions that we do have on the right-hand side. There are times when we look at the traffic that's generated, and in the event that we can accommodate and allow the contractor to work, extended hours. We try to do that, but we are extremely mindful of the work that's going to participate so that we don't, encroach on should I say, the livelihood of the community. We typically, when we do work beyond the hours that I do show over there, what we will do is we'll have our traffic engineers perform an analysis and look to see and determine, based on the type of work that we're going to do and the type of lane closures and restrictions that we may have on traffic, whether we anticipate that there could be some extensive delays, and we try and limit those delays to as little as possible. Continuing on, I will talk about the projects now specifically. This is the suspender rope replacement. On the north side, we have 296 ropes, and we are moving pretty well with that. Currently, to date, we've replaced 288 ropes. We've got 2 panel points, which each panel point consists of 2 ropes to replace. We were hoping to have completed those, earlier this year. In January, February, however, due to the weather restrictions that we've encountered, it's very difficult for the iron workers to work under such conditions. So we're still trying to complete the last 2 panel points of the last 8 ropes. That is going pretty well. At the same time, at each panel point, we also, opening up the main cables, and we're doing any strand repairs on the strands of the main cables. That has been, working out in our favor. However, we have at certain points in certain locations experienced some difficulties as far as the number of corroded strands and the replacement of those corroded strands. But we are working at that. At the same time, between the panel points, what we're doing is we're also exposing the main cable, looking at and performing an inspection. Basically, what we do is we take wooden wedges and we wedge it between the strands and try and make a determination of what the condition is. The lower left picture that you see over there, that is pretty much a photograph of the completed sidewalk, and also the sidewalk fence on the right-hand side that you see over there. That'll be 11 foot high with a rub rail, and there will also be a new fencing adjacent to the roadway. We had presented this to you folks approximately 2 years ago. And we re-looked at that, and we came back and presented to you, a better graphic of what that's going to look like, which I'll get back, which I'll show you in the next couple of slides. So basically, this is, how the work has been staged at the present time. We're working on the north side. We started in 2018. We're anticipating that hopefully by the second quarter of 2022, we'll be able to, open up the north walk. It's currently closed. We're working on that, and as I said, we are replacing the sidewalk. We're putting in a new concrete barrier adjacent to the roadway, between the roadway and the sidewalk area, and some other structural improvements that we're making as well. Once we've completed with that work, we will be opening the north walk, and the north walk will eliminate all the staircases that we currently have. On the New York north side, there are some staircases; those will be eliminated, and at the same time, on the New Jersey north side, those staircases will also be eliminated, and the north walkway will be fully ADA accessible, and at the same time, bicycles will be able to use that. Once that does occur, we will be, combining the pedestrians and the cyclists on the north side, and we will open up the south side approximately the second quarter of 2022, and we'll commence work on the south side, at which time everybody will be using the north side. That work should continue on through until approximately the first quarter of 2026, at which time once we're completed with that work, we will be able to open up both sidewalks. The intent is that we will sign all cyclists to traverse the north walkway. However, keep in mind, it will not preclude any pedestrians from utilizing the north walkway as well, and similarly with the south walk as well. It's just that the intent is to try and direct the bicyclists all to head onto the north side, being that both sidewalks will be available to cyclists and pedestrians, and as I said before, that the stairs on the north side will be removed. Continuing on, this is basically a rendering of what the sidewalk will look like. We started the sidewalk fencing. We've started installing some of the sidewalk fencing on the north side, and we continue with that at the same time, replacing the sidewalk. This is a another rendering. If you're in your vehicle and you're driving on the bridge and you look either on the north side or the south side, this basically what we show over here is the on the eastbound roadway looking south down the Hudson. That's basically what you will see. As you will see on the left over the photograph over there, you see the suspender ropes that have been replaced, and at the same time, we're also replacing the sleeve protection of those particular ropes. Continuing on, basically what you see over here, these are progress photographs of what's been occurring on the north side. As you can see over there, we've got the north on the left side. You see the north walkway where we have actually removed the existing fencing, and the contractor is working in replacement of the sidewalk. And just below that, what you see over there is where it says the new sidewalk extension installation around the New York Tower. Basically, what we're doing is, because we have the sharp turns on the sidewalk as you enter the towers, there is a tremendous amount of conflict in those locations that's occurring between cyclists and pedestrians and users of the sidewalk. So what we're doing is we're installing a section of, it's approximately 30 feet long, where we will be easing the burden, and it basically will be more of a tangential approach into those areas as you merge through into the towers, and we'll be eliminating those 90-degree turns, and they won't be an issue. And hopefully, we will have a harmonious traverse between cyclists and bicyclists on both the north side and the south side when everything is completed accordingly. And you'll see on the photograph over there on the right is basically the progress that we have, where we've actually opened up the sidewalk, and we are replacing sidewalk stringers and putting in new structural steel. And at the same time, we will be relocating the utilities that we previously relocated back to the underside. And hopefully we will be completing all of this work on the north side, as I said previously, by the end of the second quarter in 2022. We have experienced some delays. We did have some significant delays due to deteriorated conditions that we never anticipated. It was some of the steelwork was a lot more deteriorated than we had anticipated. In addition to that, we did have some incidences where we had to stop construction and regroup and relook at our security requirements and our safety requirements. As I'm sure most of you folks have noticed that we did have and we have placed some deterrent fencing on the south side because of issues that we had in the past with regards to folks attempting certain activities that would try to preclude that, and we've precluded that pretty well. We did have some issues on the north side, and we've now eliminated those, and hopefully we will continue expeditiously with the north side completing that, and then switch over to the south side, as I said. Continuing on with the rehabilitation of West 178th Street, 179th Street, the bus turnaround ramps. As you can see, the bus turnaround ramp is in this area over here, and we also have another one in this area. We've completed this particular bus turnaround. At the same time, the 178th Street ramp has been completed. We're working on the 179th Street ramp, plus as well the columns that you see over here in the light yellowish greenish. We're upgrading seismic protection for all of these ramps. So we've been working on the structural rehabilitation of these structures. The north walkway, which is the north ADA access ramp, we're working on that. We've pretty much completed most of the structural elements over there, and I'll show you some photographs as we proceed, further on into the presentation. So this is basically, the George Washington Bridge sidewalk access on the New York side of the bridge, the north walkway, and this is the south walkway. And basically, we will also have some viewing stations along the way, and at the same time, we will be improving access entrances onto the walkways, and we'll also be able to provide some fencing over there as well. This is what you see over here is the New York South. And you've got the viewing platform is what you'll be seeing on the south side. And similarly, on the north side, which we're very close to completion of, we've been working expeditiously on this. As you can see, we've created a small little plaza over here as you enter the sidewalk area. And this is the viewing platform rendering that we are working on at the same time. This is the George Washington Bridge Park reconfiguration. If you look at the existing park on the left, we've actually reconfigured it, and we've made it a little bit more, should I say, we'd like to call it a little more friendly and adaptive to the current usage. So we've made improvements to that, and I'll show you some photographs of what we have done over there. This over here is the park itself. As you can see, we've put in some additional seating. We put in some seating areas, and at the same time, we've reconfigured the entrance to the park so that you can enter further off in this direction, so that people entering the park do not commingle with folks that are trying to enter the bridge or walkway at the same time, so that we can also potentially eliminate any conflict if any bicyclists are using this entrance versus people entering and exiting the park. If you look at the rendering that I show over here, you'll see that where I have my cursor over here, we actually made some changes in the field. That was the original design. However, if you look at the photograph on the lower right-hand side, we looked at that, and during construction, we actually changed that, and we put in this little semicircular seating area, so it's more adaptive to folks to congregate and enjoy the park. As it's completed, we have completed most of the work over there. There's some minor punch list item that we're working on. And Ken, correct me if I'm wrong. I think we may be able to open this, relatively soon, probably, hopefully, in the early summer. I think it'll be available that it can reopen. Ken, if you could just comment on that very quickly.
Yeah, first and foremost, I was very, very sad to learn that Jean Lee Poggi had passed away. It broke my heart when I heard that news. I've been a part of this park for close to 5 decades, that I'm aware of, and maybe even longer. But I know how true to her heart this park is. We, the Port Authority, said that we would have the work complete in order for the community to have beneficial use of it. So we will have that the beginning of the spring and into summer. If the committee decides that they want to open the park this year, that's all going to be up to you guys based on whatever COVID restrictions that you have put in place.
Thanks, Ken. Continuing on, as you can see over here, this is the entrance, the 179th Street, 180th Street entrance into the walkway. I think it already looks pretty nice over there. We've got those bollards over there, which will preclude any vehicles from entering. So it'll provide access for both pedestrian and bicyclists. And on the right-hand side, as you can see over there, that's ongoing construction of the concrete barrier that has been installed, and also the continuance of the new sidewalk. And we're currently working on hopefully commencing with installation of the new fencing adjacent to the walkway on the right-hand side. This is the north viewing platform, as you can see over there. It's still under construction, and we have installed some of the fencing closer to the platform, and hopefully we will have that completed relatively soon. But once again, keep in mind that the only time that we can open the north walkway is when we can complete all the work, and we're switching to the south side, and that's when that'll occur. We are striving to try and have this walkway portion completed, by the end of the year. Hopefully in the fourth quarter, it should be completed, and we can start, working on punch list items that we'll need in order to open up, the north walkway, so that we can switch work to the south side. The fence that you see on the right photograph over there is pretty much the protective fencing, and that is going pretty well, and we should hopefully, like I said, have everything completed by the end of the year. Continuing on at some of the previous discussions that we came at, coupled with this particular project, we had spoken about a ULIP process that we are currently going through. As you can see, in the sketch over here, where you have these areas that are under the dashed lines. Those areas are where the ramps were constructed back in 1962. The ramps are open, accessing the bridge, both on the north side of here and also on the south side. What we did discover during the process when we were going through the project, that there was a Board of Estimate resolution for this work in 1957, I believe, and as a result, that process was never ever completed, and the paper streets still exist. Keep in mind that the elevation differences that do exist between 179th, 180th Street, 178th and 170th Street is significant due to the roadway ramps that support the Henry Hudson Parkway, on and off from the George Washington Bridge. So this ULIP process, basically, what is going on with it right now, we had commenced this a number of years ago, and we submitted the application to the New York City Department of City Planning, and we worked very closely with the Manhattan Borough President's Office to prepare the topographic maps for the demapping of the paper streets, and that was recently approved by the Manhattan Borough President's Office. And as a result, for everybody's information, the ULIP process is proceeding, and it will be introduced at the City Planning Commission meeting on March 15th. At that point, actually March 16th, sorry, it will be introduced. And from that point on, pretty much what's going to occur is there is about a 1-year process in which to go through the process. And I believe that approximately 60 days after introduction to the City Planning Council for review, we have to come back to the community board and meet with the community board and make a presentation, probably at a public hearing. It will be scheduled. So, we are waiting to hopefully everything goes according to plan, and on March 16th it'll be introduced. So basically, I've given a little bit of history of VR. As you can see, in 1957, there was a resolution that was introduced in the Board of Estimates, for the work to proceed for the lower level of the Hudson River ramps that support the George Washington Bridge. Unfortunately, the process was never ever completed to demap the streets, and as a result, we're trying to complete that process right now. So the ULIP process will formalize the transfer of the paper streets property. At the same time, if I just want to go back to this, as you'll see over here, these are the walkways that we've superimposed over the roadways that currently exist. The park is right under the UL that we have worked on. At the same time, that's the entrance at 180th Street. And this is the South Walkway. What we do have currently, there is a ramp in this vicinity over here, which is extremely steep. And at the same time, it causes major conflicts between the users, bicyclists, pedestrians, and users who are trying to access the sidewalk. So that will be eliminated, and this will be the new ramp with the new viewing platform as well. In this little area under there where it says ramps under the P, there is a turnaround, and as you can see, there's a piece of property that is part of the transfer where the intention is that the Port Authority transfers that little piece of property over to New York City DOT so that they can be made whole and complete for that turnaround. Okay, continuing on. We have the TME barrier and water system sea rehabilitation. This is basically what we're looking over here are the TME roadways underneath the apartment buildings. The barriers on which is basically what we're looking at are these 3 barriers over here, which when they were constructed, they met the current codes and standards at the time, but over the years, due to the vehicular traffic sizes, increasing, and at the same time the speeds have increased, the heights of these barriers were suspect, and plus as well the condition had deteriorated. So we had embarked on a replacement of these 3 barriers so we can provide a better safe condition for the traversing vehicles, across the through the TME barriers. So what we see over here is on the left-hand side of the existing conditions of the barriers that, are in a deteriorated condition. And, we had been repairing them over the years. And as you can see, the height of the barrier, how low it is in comparison to the vehicles going through. On the right-hand side, this is a new barrier that we've completed. The height is significantly higher. I believe the existing barriers were 42 and we're up to, I think, 52 inches. So they are much higher. And the columns that you see over here in this particular photograph, that is the fireproofing to protect the columns, which is deteriorated over time. And we're in the process of removing any deteriorated fireproofing and replacing that with new fireproofing. These are additional progress photos. As you can see, there's a photograph of some of the deteriorated fireproofing concrete that is spalled. And the view that you see on the right-hand side over here is pretty much a repaired and replaced barrier, completely replaced. And the columns that you can see have also been replaced. And up above, you can see that some of the work that's associated with the other project, you can see that, we have actually completed some of the work up above, which is the 170 and 178, 179 Street, and bus ramps and the bus turnaround. The last project that we do have is the TME, the Trans-Manhattan Expressway overpasses. This basically comprises of 6 bridges. We have the Fort Washington Avenue Bridge, the Broadway Bridge, the Wadsworth Bridge, St. Nicholas, Autobahn, and Amsterdam Avenue. These basically we are going to be making some structural improvements on 4 of the bridges, and 2 of the bridges we will be actually replacing the decks, because the decks have reached a point that they pretty much need to be upgraded because of some of the deterioration. And also we do have one of the bridges. There seems to be some stress on some of the girders, and we made the determination with our structural engineers that it's better to replace those girders rather than repair them. So in summary, this is basically the work that we will be completing at Fort Washington Avenue Bridge, the Broadway Bridge, Wadsworth, and Autobahn. We're looking at the asphalt overlay removal and resurfacing, some concrete deck repairs, sidewalk repairs. We're going to be replacing the joint over at Broadway. We'll be doing some deck joint resealing, some superstructure repairs, substructure repairs, as I mentioned. Some of the soffit slab repairs and replacement. Utility supports, we're going to be providing new utilities, and we will also be looking to work with the utility companies so that we can get this work done. On the St. Nicholas Avenue Bridge and the Amsterdam Avenue Bridge, these are the 2 bridges where we're actually going to be replacing part of the concrete deck replacement and the concrete approach slabs. At the same time, in addition to the work that I mentioned, the previous other 4 bridge, we are going to also be replacing some bearing replacements, and there will be some seismic retrofit. And as you can see over here, this is where we do have a girder that is cracked, and that's one of the girders that we will be replacing in its entirety. That will be a significant undertaking, and at the same time, we're also looking at painting these 2 the structural steel supports, and also removal of any lead-based paint. That this particular project, we were in what we call stage 2 design, where we had done all of our preliminary investigation and came up with alternatives. Due to COVID-19 restrictions and due to certain delays, we've actually deferred this work, and we will be starting with contract document preparation in 2023. But I think it is important that this be mentioned, because this is a project that we will be reaching out extensively with the community and with all of the stakeholders associated in this area, because there is going to be some significant amount of work. We anticipate that once we do get going with the construction, this will probably be a minimum of about a 5-year construction period. As you can see over here, some of what we have developed already in the so-called phase 1 investigation process. We've actually looked at all of the field conditions. We've documented everything. We have been looking at developing maintenance protection of traffic. We do understand the difficulties of working in the area, because we have been experiencing the TME work that we've been doing below, but obviously up above, there's going to be a lot more significant maintenance protection of traffic that we're going to have to provide, keeping in mind that we do have businesses on those cross streets, on those overpasses. In addition to that, we've got apartments, and we've got entrances to buildings. We're going to have to make sure that, we, fully accommodate everybody. So that's going to be an extensive process. And we anticipate that we will be meeting on numerous occasions with, coming back to the community board on multiple occasions to meet and discuss plans that we've put together. And at the same time, meeting with, community leaders and getting their input as to how we can best work together harmoniously together. So that's pretty much the green block that I have over there, the stakeholder coordination. That will be, extensive once we've developed those constructability and maintenance protection of traffic plans. We will share them and see how we can best accommodate everybody. And at the same time, keeping in mind that, we will try and abate as much noise as possible, keeping in compliance with New York City Department of Transportation and New York City Building Department requirements. So the public outreach is, like I said, earlier, it's going to be extensive. We will have, we've currently, retained a consultant who's working with us, and part of that consultant group is, the Sam Schwartz, consultant services will be provided, and they're going to be, working on our behalf as well to reach out with us and with everybody at the community board and also all interested stakeholders. So these are what we've listed as, some of the possible impacts that we could be anticipating. There will be a time when there will be permanent lane closures. However, we're not anticipating to close the overpasses in their entirety. We will make sure that there is at least one direction of traffic traversing over those over the overpasses. If we are able to maintain in a bi-direction, we're looking at that very closely to see how that could possibly be accomplished. At the same time, we will have lane closures during the day and or during times when we will be permitted. The hours of work that I had mentioned earlier, those are the hours of work that are primarily for on the Port Authority bridges and structures, and we obviously are going to have to work a lot more closer with the with all stakeholders associated with the city streets on the 6 overpasses. So these are some of the efforts that we will be undertaking between now and 2023 when we do start up with the contract document preparations. Hopefully we will be looking at some additional information, and if we need to go out and do any additional investigation, we'll be doing that, and we will be alerting the community on that basis. So those are pretty much the projects that I have on the as part of the Restoring the George program. In addition to that, just very quickly, I do want to add over here that we do have the all electronic tolling, which is coming very soon. That's basically the electronic tolling, which will increase traversing across the structure and through the toll plazas. To date, the lower level toll plaza was activated on November 17th of 2020. So we do have cashless tolling through that. At the same time, on the Palisades and State Parkway, as you head south onto the George Washington Bridge toll plaza, that in-lane cashless tolling has gone into effect as of February 2nd, 2020. We're anticipating that, according to the schedule, that by the middle of 2022, we should be completed with all the electronic tolling. So that is moving. There are obviously tremendous amount of coordination that we are doing at the present time on the New Jersey side, so that we can make sure that everything moves smoothly. In addition to that, basically, that's what I have with regards to Restoring the George and also the all electronic tolling. What we have over here is if anybody needs to connect or reach out to anybody at the Port Authority, these are our contacts that we have set up. And also, Chris Lee through Government and Community Relations is always available to receive any phone calls or address any issues with us. How we can address any concerns or comments that the community may have during the ongoing process. And as I previously had mentioned earlier on, with regards to noise abatement, when we do receive noise complaints, we take them very seriously. We try and investigate and abate as soon as possible if it's anything that is caused or as a result of any of the work that we are, engaged in. So that concludes my presentation that I have. And, if anybody has any questions of, myself, Ken or Chris, I would gladly try and answer any questions that you may have.
Hey, thanks, Mario. Deborah, I see there's a ton of questions, or not a ton, but a bunch of questions in the chat. I'm taking them all down. I want to be conscious of your time for the meeting. Do you want us to just go through these outside of the meeting, get and answer them and email them back to you? Or do you want to go through them one by one?
I think it depends on the question. So let me say a few things before we kind of kick off. So just the ground rules. We go to the committee first, and then other CB12 board members, and then the public. People have 2 minutes to make their comment, and then we leave an extra minute for any, if they've asked a question, to sort of get their answer from you guys. So total 3 minutes. But I also want to say it's sort of a funky night tonight, because our second agenda item is more of a free-form discussion of bike infrastructure and CB12. And so there are some correspondences between all the, work on the North Walkway that you've updated about tonight and that. And I do, though, want to keep the conversation somewhat separate for some of the questions that sort of really relate to larger questions of bike infrastructure and CB12. That said, I do want to, I guess I had a general question about, for example, what is it about the 179th Street ramp that is so much longer project than 178th? And I see we have a few questions in the chat, although it was before you partially answered it, about why it would take so long to get the north side walkway open. I think the answer is that while we can see from the street the ADA ramp that comes off the bridge walkway is almost done, I think it has something to do with the fact that you have to wait for the rest of the north side work to be done. But if you could just address those just to kick off, I think that sort of will cover some of the questions, and then we'll go to Omar Tejada and Jim Berlin from the committee. But yeah, if you could just first speak to sort of the length of time for some of these things that sort of seem like maybe they could be shorter.
Sure. So to kind of go back to what you were saying, you are absolutely right. So you see that the pedestrian walkway, the new construction that kind of goes from the bridge down to Cabrini there, that is substantially complete. There is a lot of other work that's still ongoing there, but a lot of it's done. The bigger work right now is we need to finish the actual suspender ropes themselves. We need to finish replacing the sidewalk, because although they have replaced the suspender ropes, they haven't replaced the sidewalk along the entire course. Mm-hmm. They haven't replaced the entire barrier that goes across the bridge. That's the other half of the sidewalk on the roadway side. And then on the New Jersey side, the pedestrian ramps that bring you down to the roadway level, that has a lot of work left to do. So the New York side is pretty much substantially complete. The New Jersey side has still got a lot of work to do. So that's kind of why it's going to take. All that work has to be complete before we can open the North Walk.
Okay. And then the 179th Street ramp, just very briefly, what makes that so much longer? Is that just because of the bus turnarounds and the seismic work? But 178th was open in like a heartbeat.
Well, I think it was done in a multitude of phases. Okay, and what we're trying to do is we need to kind of tie the different projects together. So we're tying the pedestrian ramp with the roadway ramp with the bus ramp. So it was kind of like a giant mesh of stuff kind of coming together, and that's kind of why it's taking a little bit longer. But again, the 179th Street ramp is open, and when we were working on the 178th Street side, it was completely closed, and we were diverting traffic down. So because we had the availability of ensuring that we were bringing traffic off of the 179th Street ramp, there wasn't, it was like a different timing perspective on it with regards to, because we were bringing traffic across. So we did maintain traffic and the same traffic flow. off of 179th, where on 178th we completely cut it off. So that's part of the reason why.
Thanks, Ken. And also thank you, Ken, for recognizing this week's terrible loss of Jean Lee Poggi and what she has meant to the park and 181st Street and its environs writ large. Next, we're going to go to Omar Tejada.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the presentation. I just have a few questions. If we can go to the slide, I think it's slide 16, which is the 178, 179 street ramps. Yeah, this one. So I've biked across the George Washington Bridge back and forth more times than I can remember at this point as an avid cyclist. And first question I have is, what's the average grade on this ramp from street level to getting over onto the bridge?
I think it's no more than a quarter inch per foot, I believe. That's the reason that these ramps are as long as they are,
Okay.
because we had to be mindful of any pedestrians and ADA requirements. So it meets the code.
Yeah, and what would that compute towards a grade average on that? Like, what's that grade average look like? Is it 1%, 2% average grade from this point onto the bridge itself as an average?
I don't know I haven't calculated that, to be honest with you. All I know, it's roughly a quarter inch per foot. If I had to calculate that, let me see if I can calculate it quickly. Well, the reason that that the grade is a quarter inch per foot is that's basically what is recommended by AASHTO standards for ADA access.
Okay.
So so that if you do have somebody in in a wheelchair, they're able to traverse the ramp rather than having extensive difficulty. So we have to take that into consideration.
Great.
And that's why the ramp is so long.
Yeah.
We could have much shorter ramp, but we had to build it that way in order to make it accessible.
Okay, I asked that question only because it would give me a frame of reference on potential speed that can be picked up by cyclists coming off that ramp onto the street level. So that's the only reason why I was asking that question. The second question I have is in terms of the ballards that I see here. Is there a reason why we don't have ballards that are right at that entrance, meaning one in the middle to kind of divide it? I think it kind of helps to slow down some of the cyclists coming off this ramp and kind of like direct traffic a little bit. Is there a reason why we didn't put one near those two doors that swing?
Well, the reason we put the bollards, closer to the roadway in that vicinity is that if people are congregating in that plaza area that is created, basically we don't want any vehicles to mount the curb and actually hurt anybody. As far as putting them by the gates that you see over there, we felt that at that point it would cause an issue, as like you said, bicyclists coming down the ramp. Bicyclists have to be cognizant of their speed coming down, and at the same time, because there could be potential commingling of bicyclists and pedestrians. So we didn't want to impact the trajectory or the path of folks that are entering, exiting at that particular point.
Okay, and just one more final thing, and I'm done. If any way to put anything reflective, night reflective on those ballards, that would be helpful at nighttime when visibility is reduced.
We'll look at that.
Thank you.
All right. Next, we have Jim Berlin. And then also, if you are in the attendee group and have a question, just raise your hand and we will get to you.
Thank you. I agree. I second Omar. Thank you for coming to us. Keep that slide on the screen, by the way. I don't quite understand what this barrier is about. Is it in the middle of the pedestrian/bicycle ramp, or what is that thing?
No, that's actually the other side of the ramp, the pedestrian ramp. So that you have a construction barrier out there right now that's protecting the work zone. But you'll lift that.
Now I understand. Right. Okay.
That'll be the permanent barrier between the pedestrian path and the roadway when we're complete.
Very good. Thank you. And my second question is, And I think last time maybe you actually had a picture of it, and this time you didn't. You mentioned you're getting rid of the right angles when you get to the towers. So basically, remind me in a little bit more detail of how you're going to do that.
So
We're gonna
if I go back up to this picture over here, Ken, you can talk off this picture. This over here.
So pretty much what we're doing is we're creating a small piece that's going to come off the tower, rectangle. That's about 30 foot long. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mary. It's about 30 foot long. And what that's going to do, it's going to soften that turn. So instead of having to come up straight, make a hard left, and make a hard right, you're going to have a triangle now where you're going to be able to smoothly come into it and smoothly come out of it. And hopefully also get better visibility between pedestrians and cyclists as they're walking and riding. So it's to try to ease that burden and ease that conflict between those two groups. Again, when the whole thing is complete, the goal is to have cyclists on one side and pedestrians on the other. And I suspect that they're going to segregate themselves as such for the most part, because obviously, the pedestrians are not going to want to have the cyclists on the sidewalk with them if they can help it. So that is the long-term goal when we open up, because right now we only operate on one sidewalk. The goal is to open up both sides when the project is 100% complete.
Thank you very much. And I came in under time. Look at that. Thanks again.
You're welcome.
Jim, thanks for doing the timing also. So next from CB12, we have Sally Fisher with a comment.
I'm sorry, I gotta get my mask off. Thanks for the presentation. This is very interesting. It's my first one, so I'm coming.
Sally, could you just speak up a little, or speak up more, or get closer to the mic?
Can you hear me now?
It's a little better.
You know what? Why don't do you want to go to somebody else and I will fix my.
No, you're okay. I think we got you now.
Two questions. One is, and this is just more of my ignorance, so Debbie, you can tell me it's a stupid question, they can go on. In terms of suicide prevention off to George, where are we in terms of completing the plans or things that were recommended to you to do, which I don't know what they were, but I know that was an issue in the health and environment a couple of years ago, which would have been since last you came to us or came to the community board. I think you said the last time you were here was 2019. And also my second question, which is more self-interested, is if a group wanted to do some plantings and stuff in the park, who would they get in touch with? Is that Christopher or is that somebody else?
I'm not really sure what park that you would be doing any plantings in. You have the Dolphin Park, which is a community park, right. And that's something that the community is in control of. Right. The plaza area that we've built is pretty much a concrete and paver area. So
right?
a few plantings that we will be putting some trees in and some other stuff, but it's really not going to be open as a community park.
Okay.
With regards to suicide and as it relates specific to the bridge, I can't speak to what's happening in the community. As part of the project initially, we put up a temporary pedestrian facing netting on the south walk to keep people from taking that tragic act and preventing it. It's been very effective. The walk, and then on the new design, Marios has brought it up. What we're going to do is we're going to be putting up an 11-foot fence on the water side. We're going to have a roadside fence of 4.5 feet, and we're going to have anti-climbing things related to the fencing so that people aren't going to be able to scale or climb it. We're going to continue to do what we're doing today, which we do have foot patrols out on the bridge. We do have people who drive across the bridge regularly looking for pedestrians that may be in distress or cyclists that are in distress. So that's kind of what we're done and what we're doing and how we're going to deal with the issue.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Sally. I'm going to go over to Allegra Legrand now from our attendee list. Sorry, Allegra. Oh yeah. Okay, there you are. Okay, good.
Hi. Thanks, Debbie. I have a couple of questions. One, you addressed why it's taking the north side so long, but you didn't say why the south side, which doesn't have the need to remove all those staircases, is going to still take another 4 years. And in the interim, you've heard hints of how there is this competition between pedestrians and cyclists. And especially during COVID, there's been a big increase in cycling, and it doesn't seem like there's been any kind of planning or accommodation to deal with that increased traffic. So other bridges around New York City are converting car lanes into bike lanes to get rid of this issue of cyclists going too fast for pedestrians. But we still have to wait to 2026 before we might have a hope of getting that here. So I was hoping if you could address that. Why there's no little turnout spaces. Pedestrians like to stop and gaze at what's going on, but when they do that, there's not enough space in these lanes. So why, like your 30-foot ramp to get around the arches, like why you don't have like little pullouts for people to stop and gaze? Why that's not part of it? I also wonder why there are other Hudson River crossings where there are connections between the water level and the walkway, like Walkway over the Hudson, like an elevator, but there's none here, even though there's obvious bicycle infrastructure with the Henry Hudson Greenway that could be connected directly to this crossing into New Jersey. So how are you going to increase the volume of bicycle traffic that's allowable in these roadways in the near term?
All right, so one of the things that we have found is that the use of the walkway has not dramatically increased as you had stated. It's remained pretty much the same, throughout the COVID period. With regards to, opening up bridge lane for traffic purposes for cyclists, that is not likely to occur. Unfortunately, due to the volume of traffic that actually goes across the bridge, that is vehicular traffic, we're not going to be able to accommodate cyclists on the actual span. Also, what would be required in terms of safety components, we'd actually have to take 2 lanes on the bridge to make it safe. So again, that probably is not likely to happen. With regards to connections to all the different bikeways and bike paths, I mean, New York City and the city is more than welcome to try to make those connections and kind of draw that together and do the different things to kind of direct people back and forth. We of course would cooperate with them in anything that they would do to do that. Regarding the south side, because I know that's one of the things you have mentioned first, the reason why we have not begun work on the south side suspender ropes. So we need to do the entire project on the south side. We were only working on the north side so that we could allow for pedestrians and cyclists to continue using the south side. So even though we're not building as extensive ramp system, we've actually started building the pedestrian ramp on the south side as part of the work we've done because it wasn't tied to it. But we have to do the entire ropes on and barrier and everything else and fencing on the south side, and that's why. I think I'm out of time.
Thank you. And what I'd like to do, it's 8 o'clock. I would like to wrap this session up. We have okay, Maggie, I'm seeing maybe you're with, okay. So we're going to take one more. Oh no, we're going to take 2 more. We're going to take Maggie Clark, and then we're going to take Dimitri Katumbas, and but that'll be it on this topic. Maggie, you want to go ahead? Yeah, you should be good now.
Okay, good. Yes, I'll be quick because Allegra gave most of what I would have wanted to say, but I do want to say I think it's important for Port Authority to work with streets and parks to make a way to get from the bridge down to the Henry Hudson path. It doesn't do anybody any good to have to figure that out on their own, especially if they're not local. And I know you partially answered that, kind of a non-answer, like, well, maybe it'll happen, but I would hope that you would reach out to the city agencies to make sure that it does happen, because a lot of the people, I've been taking the bridge as a cyclist, leading groups from New York Cycle Club, Five Borough Bike Club since 1982. And I can tell you that the increase in traffic is huge since then, and it's become dangerous. So, and there are many more people from Jersey coming to New York than there used to be. So I think you need to figure, put signage that this is how you get down to that path and so forth.
Okay, thank you, Maggie. And then, I think we need to bring that in the next conversation as well. Dimitri? There you go.
Hi, I just wanted to ask like a long-term planning question. Has there been any discussions on capping parts of the TME? As you know, there's a lot of carbon emissions coming from the expressway into our neighborhood. I was just wondering if Port Authority ever discussed that or touched upon that issue.
At this point, we have looked at that in various different reasons as part of different projects. Pretty much what would happen is you would create a vehicular tunnel. And in creating a vehicular tunnel, you would have to create ventilation inside that tunnel and also add additional emergency response. It would be very cost prohibitive to do that. In addition, we would then have to site those ventilation buildings somewhere in the neighborhood, which also probably would not be popular with the community. So again, the way it's kind of coexisting now, if there is any emissions that are coming out, they're kind of being dispersed evenly throughout the Trans-Manhattan Expressway. If you were to make it a tunnel, it would be discharged directly in one spot, which would probably create a greater issue for people in the community.
Thank you.
So I just want to thank Mario, Ken, and Chris for helping organize all of this. It's been really great to get an update. It's been a while. And as you can tell, we're all eager to have better walkways, as quickly as can happen. So thank you, Team Port Authority.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
And Deborah, please give out my email address to anyone who wants to talk directly to the Port Authority. We're happy to answer questions and talk whenever you guys have questions.
Okay, great. Thanks for letting me do that.
Yeah.
Great. All right. Well, with that, I want to sort of say thank you, DOT team, for your patience. And I think we probably have some, I'm just looking through, promotions to make of the DOT team.
Ted. If you see Ted, right?
Chanel, have you promoted a Ted? Is Kimberly, I'm promoted. Oh yeah, there we go. There's Ted.
Sorry guys, I'm looking pretty spooky. I'm kind of doing bedtime. I'm cross training right now. So
why are you sideways?
I don't know. I like to do it. I'd like a
there
portrait.
You go. There
we
you
go.
go.
I'm sorry. I'm not usually this spooky, but I've got the lights on dim because the kid's going to sleep. Sorry.
Well, just before we get started, I just want to give a little intro. This is going to be not, I guess, our total typical format. One thing that was sort of striking over the last period of time is, but certainly came to a head when we had the last city bike presentation about the expansion north of 184th Street, is that we're hearing a lot about bike infrastructure issues in CB12, and we're hearing more, but we have different strains of it. We sometimes are talking about Dykeman and let's say Riverside. Sometimes we're talking about Seaman. Sometimes we're talking about the Greenway. Sometimes we're talking about getting to the Bronx. And then you were also talking about the Greenway. And something that came up on City Bike, was sort of as one, I don't know if it was Dimitri or another person who's hopefully in attendance, about the Great Valley that you get in terms of north-south connections, with really just St. Nicholas is the only option. So you get kind of the adjacent valley. So anyway, so I wanted to have a time where we could have a little bit more of a free form context. And so there are a few people from our community who are going to speak about particular aspects, and sort of, I have one or two people that I've given kind of an extra minute to, but I would love to start with Ted from DOT Bike World to just give us sort of a state of play about sort of where bike infrastructure is today. Obviously, we're pretty aware of initiatives over the past years, but sort of where are we now? What's in front of us? And what are the implications of a probably dramatically bad budget coming up, and all of that. I don't have a particular sort of agenda about where this all goes, but I do feel like it's important to kind of get it all on the record together and not sort of as tangents to other conversations. So I appreciate everybody who's here tonight, and all the expertise that's represented between DOT and our attendee list this evening. With that, let me hand it to Ted.
Right, that's pretty open-ended. I'm going to try to do my best, but I think perhaps the best forum is for me to kind of answer questions here. But I guess we're still being asked to do a lot more bike infrastructure in the city of New York. This isn't going away. The more miles we build, the more people bike. That's kind of citywide. I would say, as somebody who's been in this for a while, it's kind of amazing, with most things having to do with traffic. You look at kind of the chart kind of rounding off slowly, like you stop having new riders, people stop driving as much. With biking, a lot of people thought that I was just going to I was just going to be a couple young kids. But now it's actually, it really is changing, and we're starting to see a lot more women cyclists in the cities. It's a good barometer for, usership riding, usership growing. So that's one of the things that's really kind of in the backdrop here. The council has asked us to complete 30 miles of protected bike lanes each year, something that I take seriously and we try to do. Next year, we've actually been asked to do 50 miles of protected bike lanes. To give you guys a little bit of context here, last year was our biggest year for protected lane miles with 28 miles. So we still have yet to hit the 30-mile mark. So it's a lot of work on our part. As far as some of the issues right now, budget, like nobody knows exactly what's going to happen here. I would be lying to you to say that everybody understands we got an election coming up. Who knows where our priorities are going to be. The positive thing about a lot of bicycle infrastructure is that really the way that New York does it, and sort of what our success has been over the years in increasing the number of protected bike lanes faster than any other city in the US at least, is that we do this out of a normal markings budget. We don't do large capital projects. Not everything can be the Hudson River Greenway. We have to, a lot of the stuff is like Dykeman. It's pretty much just markings on the ground, and that's a marginal cost over what we spend on the markings for those streets anyway. It's flexible, like that number is hard. Everybody wants to know what that number actually is, how much do bike lanes cost us, but really it's kind of marginal. If you think about that as like operating in terms of every street in New York, you need to have a certain amount of markings on the ground. You need to have a certain amount of number of signs. It needs to be repaved. That adding a little bit of green paint on top of that, yes, it's expensive, but very marginal compared to a larger capital project, kind of like what you guys just saw from the Port Authority. Those are huge, capital outlays. So I guess the point is that we're kind of sheltered, and I expect to see growth. especially with City Bike. I think I can never really follow exactly where they've expanded to, but really the push on my side will probably affect you guys is in the Bronx on the other side of the Harlem River. They are going to be going up that side of the Bronx. So you're going to have city bikes on both sides of the river relatively soon. That's going to increase ridership, has everywhere else. And I think it changes what people ask for. It definitely changes what I have to deal with, or my team has to deal with on a correspondence level. But I think, like some of the big projects coming down the way, I'd say, the East River, they are thinking about building, the UN stretch is probably going to get closed within the next 10 years. They've already started one of those construction projects. As they move up, they're also, the Port Authority, MTA Bridges and Tunnels is finishing up some paths along through Harlem. There's going to be paths up there. So slowly that Harlem Speedway that's in your district, that's at the end of Dykeman, is going to start being connected to things. There's talk on the other side with Fordham Road, the other side of 207th Street, Fordham Road also having a connection. That's exciting. And also up in Kingsbridge and Riverdale, you do have a lot of push from new lanes coming down along Broadway. Where I don't know everything that's in the works, and I probably shouldn't even say all of it. I don't want to get too ahead of myself here, but basically, like, Broadway is going to be moving down. There is a push. A lot more people want to bike. Now, I'll just do a quick thing on COVID. COVID numbers are way up, especially given the fact less people are riding into the city in cars or other points of transportation. We saw as high as 60% ridership increases on the weekends. All signs point to that, at least right now, not really going down. It might actually go up a little bit because more people are going to have to start going to work. You're going to get some vaccines, you're going to get some people trying to avoid public transit. Generally speaking, once people start to get on a bike and they get that bike moving, this includes me as well. Once I pump up my tires, I get out there and I start riding as along with a lot of you guys. So it does change habits. I think I'm going to stop there and kind of open up for questions. That was a lot. Oh, no, I can't hear you. Oh, good.
Sorry. Could you just go over one more time? Because I was like writing and thinking and of what you were saying about the Broadway thing at the end, but also the Speedway. I assume you meant like that when you were talking about connections that maybe might come to pass. And I assume you mean from Dykeman down, down like the end of the Harlem River Drive. But can you just reiterate what those were specifically?
Well, I actually kind of pulled myself back there because I don't really want to have this be a project level, me giving updates on every project. That said, what I'm saying, I don't like in a non-specific level, there is a new bike lane up in the Bronx on Broadway, and there's a big push to try to get into the city along that stretch. Because if you look at how the grades work, that's actually one of the better crossings from Riverdale's in Kingsbridge. And like the Henry Hudson apparently is getting closed, or there's steps, or I can never follow it. It's not my jurisdiction. But that is some pressure there. As far as the pressure up the east side, I think that's really going to start to grow, given the fact that the Port Authority, not the Port Authority, MTA Bridges and Tunnels is finishing up their work around 125th Street. And there's a couple of other parks projects. There's been a real focus in the city on trying to get up the Harlem River on the Manhattan side. And I think the Harlem Speedway, or you called it something else, but the part next to Highbridge Park. that segment has always been isolated. It's a really cool part of the Greenway. It's an awesome place to run or bike or what have you. But I think we're going to start to see a little bit more pressure on connecting that up to the rest of the Manhattan waterfront.
Okay. So I think, all right, actually, let's go to Robin Cruz from the committee, and then we'll sort of figure out how best to go from there.
Hello, David. How are you?
Good. Hey, Robin.
I just want to say that he said that because of the COVID, does not mean that people need more bike lane. He said that because of the COVID, a lot of people don't want to take public transportations, and making more bike lane will be helpful for the people in Washington Heights. I don't think that, because you know what happened is it's gonna take a lot of parking space, or people gonna drive crazy, and I don't know. It's not a good idea to put more bike lanes in here in Washington Heights.
Just to clarify, Ted, when you were saying the COVID thing, was that
No,
during
he said because of the pandemic, people don't want to take public transportations. So it's good for people to have more bike lane, or they're going to ride more on bike.
Right. No, but I think he was saying 60% increase in ridership in this time period. Is that right, Ted?
Yeah.
On the
yeah.
weekends,
Okay.
the weekends we've seen that much.
Oh, the weekend,
and
right.
It's been
Okay.
20%. It's been 20% on the weeks, but given the fact that traffic into the city, which is mostly how we measure this, is a lot less, that's pretty sizable. It's up there with what we've seen in like Sandy, or the transit strikes, the big things that have put people on bikes in the past.
Okay. So let me go to the attendees now. And I know I have Dimitri and I have Maggie, where you have sort of a presentation component. So Dimitri, we'll just sort of deal, if you have questions for Ted, maybe we'll just keep those two things separate. Allegra, did you have a question for Ted?
I do.
Great.
So I'm very excited about 30 miles of new bike lanes. I'm particularly interested that in Inwood, there is no safe north-south thoroughfare. You can't, the 750-mile Empire State Greenway, the worst, most dangerous stretch goes down through Kingsbridge and through Inwood, from Van Cortlandt to Dykeman and the Hudson River. So are we high on that list to get dedicated safe bike lanes? And also with respect to the bike lanes being protected by paint, I was at a Bike New York meeting, and they talked about armadillos and some other things that are somewhat more than having paint, but extremely good in discouraging cars from actually getting into the bike lanes and using them for parking lanes or otherwise just getting in there. So are any of these other safety measures? I would like to be able to bike safely with my daughter to school from our house, which is in the northern part of Inwood. And right now, there's not really a legal way to do that we have to go on the sidewalks. There's not a safe way for her to get down to Dykeman and the Hudson River. Thanks.
I feel your pain, and that's kind of why we do this, is to try to make it safe as possible so people can go with their children, or people who, might not think of riding, might want to ride and not use the excuse that it's not safe. I would say the armadillos, just to talk about what I was saying about paint, is it, as far as budget, that was one of the things that was brought up when I was introduced, and I just wanted to directly deal with that. It is a problem. We have to deal with Department of Sanitation. We have to deal with roads that are much different than a lot of parts of the world. And, it is something we're working on. We're trying out about 10 new products right now that can augment what we have out there. Armadillos are one of them. So now as far as Broadway, I would say that's, it's pretty high on the list. And I think, I'm talking to a community board audience, and just to note that we need to hear that kind of thing. We need to get that push. And it does help. And it is something that I very much listen to. I see the correspondence. Kim sees more of the correspondence than I do. So hearing kind of like what your desires are, that's important. That is one that's flagged for me. I can't say that I have a plan on my desk that's ready to go in next week, but it is something that's relatively high.
Thank you, Allegra. Again, I think it's important tonight that we get sort of the various things that we've heard on the table in this conversation. And again, the north-south connections through Inwood, to underscore it, what Allegra is saying is something that we have heard several times. Dimitri?
Hi. Yeah, so basically I want to talk about a couple of things. My name is Dimitri. I'm a resident of the district. I've basically been biking in the city since I moved here a couple years ago, year round. The first thing I want to mention is that there's already been a cultural shift in ways people basically move around due to technology. Not as many youngsters as me are basically inclined to drive anymore. This could be because of Uber, micromobility, e-bikes, ride sharing. Not only that, you also have like more delivery workers on the streets due to all these food apps that you have. So it's not only about us riding, it's basically everybody rides a bike, not only us who wants to get around, but people who actually work. Another thing is uptown bike infrastructure has really not seen the same immediacy and attention given to other neighborhoods in the city post-COVID. There's been an unequal spread of projects such as temporary bike lanes. I don't think our district has really seen a lot of those projects during COVID. Since I guess the pandemic has started, only one segment has been upgraded to a protected bike lane. That segment is on St. Nicholas near 168th Street. Edgecombe Avenue basically remains unfinished. It starts out as a protected bike lane from 170th, and then it stops at 166th. I assume that must have been part of a comprehensive bike network plan that is on the shelf. Second concern, as the city bike system continues to expand in our area and further uptown, I believe it's critical to keep expanding the existing bike network as city bike continues to expand its system. Basically, we don't want to avoid any casualties or injuries between bicyclists and trucks. There are truck routes throughout our district. We have Broadway, Amsterdam, and then basically the whole area surrounding the Trans-Manhattan Expressway. Yeah, another thing is Harlem River bridges don't really see balanced basically transportation. There's really no safe way to get across the Bronx to Washington Heights with a bike. There's already a busway in talks for 181st Street that could be also incorporated into a People's Way bridge, which could prioritize movement for more sustainable ways of getting around. Some areas of crucial concern I also want to note out is basically that area of 168th Street and Broadway. There's a lot of intersections where the interaction between bicycle traffic and car traffic is of concern. Yeah, lastly, I want to mention that basically this is kind of a critical issue. You have basically President Biden and Pete Buttigieg basically talking about transforming the transportation sector. We are in a state of emergency. There's a climate crisis looming on top of us. Most of the emissions come from the way we move around. 60% of people in the city don't own a car or move around with a car. Most people move around through public transportation. And as I mentioned before, there's a cultural shift in how people move around with e-bikes and micromobility solutions. So basically, we're talking about rebalancing the street for how people are using it nowadays. And I just want to close out by asking to what extent DOT is actually considering the climate crisis and the shift in attitudes of how people are getting around. My issue is basically DOT hasn't really been properly designing bike infrastructure for the safety of bicyclists. So thank you.
Right, we're building bike lanes faster than any other municipality in the United States. So I'll answer that. And I want to point out that you need to be more active at a community board level. I think that would be helpful. I know that we stopped Amsterdam at CB12 because there was opposition to those lanes there. I know that Dykeman was very, very difficult to put in because of a few parking spaces that were an issue. All of these things, like when we get down to it, I think we all need to understand that these are local. And the first person who made the point about losing more parking, he's got a valid point. And like I'm not able as a bureaucrat to just forget about the people who don't want bike lanes. And it would make my life a lot easier, but we need to understand that like these are sacrifices. And you know, the Broadway corridor, if we wanted to make that safe, it would involve removing parking. And like that that is going to be hard. It's going to be hard on those businesses, and we need to get the rhetoric past the national level and start to talk about it at the local level. And I think the CB is a great way to start. I agreed with everything basically you're saying, but I just think we need to you need to put your emphasis in the right place.
I also want to mention that I worked with Bike New York. I basically compiled a street audit for the intersection of 179th and Port Washington. As most of you already know, that's an entrance to the George W. Bridge. And basically there's a lot of space to implement a lot of like bike infrastructure for the newly North Path, which will open in 2026. So I'm saying there's a lot of opportunities to actually like implement a lot of these critical safe bike infrastructure.
All right. Well, we're gonna thank you, Dimitri. I think what I want to do, I'm gonna call on Dave, Tom, and then Maggie. I'm gonna tap you, and I see a Daniel in the attendee list. Is that Pearlstein? If you can raise your hand, if it is. All right. So, and then we have Lucia, well, she'll tell us. So Dave, do you want to go ahead? Let me.
Yep. Did that work?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Hi, my name's Dave Tom. I live in Inwood and I do bike. I also own a car and ride the subway and buses and walk. So I'm really for infrastructure in all of its modes and whatever can be done uptown to improve it. In the last year, I definitely have been biking more, both to commute to work in Midtown, something I never did before. And on weekends, I've been taking my kids and other families out on bike trips. As Allegra pointed out, the connections out of Inwood are pretty rough. The West Side Greenway is narrow and potholed and has that incredible spiral hill at the George Washington Bridge. We really need that missing water level connection, which appears to be many years and many millions of dollars away. The East Side Greenway is fine until you get to 155th Street, and then you're dumped into Harlem with no protected bike lanes in any direction. That was fun to get out of one time with the kids. Going north or east out of Van Cortlandt Park, it's fantastic, especially with the improved Putnam Trail now. But you can't get there easily because that connection up the Deegan seems somewhat stalled. There's occasionally news about it, but it doesn't seem to go anywhere recently. So I agree that the high capital projects, they're going to be very difficult, and it's going to require getting more creative about doing things with markings. So my question is really, can we see more in the way of pilots from DOT to get past the inevitable parking objections and the community board objections and any other objections to at least try to improve some of these connections? As you pointed out, when you add more safe bike routes, there's a network effect. And you'll see a lot more users if the infrastructure is built that really they can't visualize it until it's there. I mean, one of the things that was somewhat underappreciated was the open street up Tibbet, which made it very easy all of a sudden to get to Van Cortlandt Park, but it wasn't really known to people that it was there, and that all of a sudden there was a great connection to get to Van Cortlandt Park out of Inwood. Only 10 blocks or so of chaos until you get there. In any case, it's, you know, these bike lanes, it's like when the first roads were paved, right? It didn't matter much until there was somewhere to go to. So I'm over time, and that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
And I'll just say one quick thing, like come up with ideas and talk to us, you know, like I think we have representatives at these meetings all the time. And, you know, I personally love to hear ideas about these things. You know, we're stretched thin right now from a budget side, but like definitely like it's cool to hear what you're talking about.
Lucia?
Hi, thank you. Yes, it's Lucia. I formerly lived in Washington Heights for about 6 years, and then I moved over to the West Bronx about 3 years ago. But I still go to Washington Heights a lot to eat at restaurants and shop and, you know, ride and walk and everything. So I just wanted to mention, you know, the Washington Bridge, not the George Washington Bridge. So the Washington Bridge, which connects Washington Heights at 181st to the West Bronx. As most of you probably know, it's kind of in a really sad state. They're doing some emergency road repair work on it now. But what I'm realizing is that, you know, with all the improvements that are happening around it, you know, there's bike lanes, protected bike lanes that are happening on the Bronx side. There's the busway pilot that hopefully will happen soon on 181st Street. There's also going to be dedicated bus lanes happening on University Ave. And, you know, DOT in 2018 proposed sort of adding a two-way bike lane on the Washington Bridge and also kind of improving pedestrian access on the south side on that bridge. And then more recently, DOT did a study where they proposed turning one car, you know, there's a total of 6 car lanes right now on that bridge, but turning one lane on each side into a dedicated bus lane. So the improvement to bus ride times for like 5 or more different routes that go between Washington Heights and the Bronx will be, you know, tremendously increased if all of those pieces are put together, right? And then eventually when City Bike expands into Inwood and into Fordham and the West Bronx, you know, as folks here have already said, there's going to be a lot more cyclists that are going to go back and forth. And we have so many essential workers, you know, there's New York Presby on this side, there's Bronx Care on the Bronx side. And this is really the only corridor for folks who don't have cars to cross. And in the Bronx, you know, almost 90% of folks don't have cars. So they're riding buses, they're driving, they're walking. I'm sorry, they're cycling.
Lucia, I'm just going to interrupt you. If you want to have time for DOT to respond in any way,
yeah. So
wrap up the.
Yeah. Thank you. So, you know, we're going to try to push, but how can we as grassroots activists, you know, push to sort of expedite these great plans that DOT has already actually proposed?
I like to call that bridge the Martha Washington Bridge. Somebody else came up with that. I can't take credit for it, but we sure would be cool if they renamed it. But it is something that we're looking at. You're absolutely right. How do you get attention? I'm a bureaucrat. I don't know the best way. I do think the community boards are a great way to do it. I think working with local bicycle clubs, like the guy who works for Bike New York, organizing rides. I do personally, I feel that as the infrastructure gets built out, it is a great reason to push. So as EL Grant and University get done on the Bronx side, that's going to make it readily apparent that bridge should have a bus bike lane on it. I would say, like, reach out to electeds and bring up that specific point that there's work being done out there. What are you guys going to do about these plans? I'm overstepping my bounds as a bureaucrat.
Thank you. We will definitely do that.
Thanks, Lucia. Thanks, Ted. Next we have Andy Rosenthal, and then Maggie, I think I'll have you go after Andy. Oh. Sorry, Andy, tell me if you, there you go.
Okay. Now can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Hi, Ted. Thanks for showing up tonight. And I have a couple of sort of nitty gritty questions. I understand parking is always a battle. By the way, I'm an Upper West Sider, but my wife runs a nonprofit headquartered in CB12. And I'm up through there very regularly. I actually keep my car. I'm a driver also. I do keep a car in a garage up there because it's a lot cheaper than the Upper West Side. Something that could be done perhaps without taking any spots away is the Broadway Bridge. So the Broadway Bridge is becoming an increasingly necessary connector, as we've heard tonight, between everybody in Manhattan and all those lovely paths. I've taken the Van Cortlandt path now, which runs all the way up actually to Albany practically. So the question is, with increasing usage of that infrastructure, why can't we improve the Broadway Bridge? Do you have thoughts on how to improve the Broadway Bridge? That would be question number one. And two is, as we build out hopefully more infrastructure coming down south of that, are you looking at 218th to Seaman, or are you actually thinking of coming straight down Broadway?
I got to look at a map for the second question and think about it. It's mostly Broadway, to tell you the honest truth. Broadway down to, I think it's 10th. That was a thought, but we're gonna have to work through that. But I have no plans for that right now. What was your first question?
Well, the Broadway Bridge itself. I mean, I'm a very experienced cyclist, and I can tell you, I am scared to go across that bridge. I do it, but it's not fun.
This is the not fun answer I have to give you. That's MTA Bridges and Tunnels. That's not me. So that's part of.
Ted, it's a DOT bridge, but there are improvements planned for it. I don't.
Wait, the Broadway Bridge?
Yeah.
Sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. I got confused.
There
are plans. We're working on it. It's probably, I would say, within the next couple of years, you're going to have protected lanes on both sides.
Terrific. Thank you.
I wish I could blame everything on MTA BT. I just tried and Kim called me out. Good job, Kim.
Debbie, you're muted.
I keep muting because I have a really squeaky chair and then I forget I'm on mute. Kimberly and Ted, you might just, if you can fill in some blanks on the Broadway Bridge and just come back to us, because I know,
yeah, I know
all the construction stuff that was planned that didn't have anything to do with bike lanes got delayed or changed or what have you. And I need to catch up to that story. And then if there is a bike lane piece of the story, that's super duper awesome. But I'm gonna guess it's more complicated. And so if you could get us a little more information on that subsequent to this meeting, that would be great. So I know that much of Maggie Clark is going to speak for a few minutes on mostly about Greenway issues, which I understand DOT is mostly not you. However, as you well know, it's just hard to, obviously for anybody trying to get up and downtown, it's sort of inextricable. So with that, Maggie, do you want to start talking now?
Sure. Okay. Thank you. And thanks for giving me an extra minute. I'll start out. Oh, Ted just left. Oh dear.
No, I'm still here.
Okay. I just want to mention before I get started with the Greenway, though, that, a good number of the rides that I've led have gone up to Westchester in Connecticut. And with all of that riding, 50-mile riding, the most treacherous part is around the Broadway Bridge, give or take a mile. And that's many, many times because I've led about 300 rides since 1982. And speaking of ways to get places, Bailey is something. I'm not sure if anything is planned for that, but that would be great to just have a lane there or 2 lanes. I use Corlier in Kingsbridge, which and I've used that for a long time. Another issue that may be overlooked is the fact that there's a bus depot and a sanitation depot, and that really makes the traffic on Broadway so hazardous. Not to mention all the people who are avoiding the toll at the Henry Hudson Bridge that go down Broadway. With regard to parking spaces, I understand that about 20% of the people in the neighborhood have cars and 80% of us don't. And the 20% want 100% of the road. And I don't think that that's fair. You know, we're not asking for 80% of the road, but it would be nice to have enough to keep us alive. That's all we're asking for, is to keep ourselves alive. And getting closer to home, I'm down on Riverside near Dykeman. There's a block on Dykeman Street that is blocked by restaurants right now. And that was supposed to be an open street. And it started out life as an open street. And now the restaurants have taken it over. And bicyclists have to go on the sidewalk to get around it. And I hope that we can restore that to being a bike lane there. And just one more thing, and I'll get into the Greenway, is that I walked with the first DOT bike coordinator in 1980, Larry Riley, up from the bridge to Dykeman Street on the broken sidewalk that is now the Greenway. And I said, it would be great to have this as a Greenway. I waited 23 years, and thank you for the Greenway. Now, I know that Parks is talking about finishing the water level route to the lighthouse. And I've brought this up with Congressman Espaillat as well as Senator Jackson, hoping that they can get some money, because I have a feeling that Parks has this on their list, that it's already shovel ready, that it should be ready to go as long as there's money. So it's just a matter of getting, you know, all of the agencies in all of the levels of government to work together on it for all the reasons that have been mentioned. And I should mention that when the upper level route to Dykeman Street was finished, I knew it not because somebody told me, but because I saw bikes all over the neighborhood all of a sudden, because I live like 2 blocks from the end of that. Economic development would boom if that water level route were finished. And there are all kinds of studies that show that. Now, I was involved when there was a NIMTIC. You guys know NIMTIC? Anyway, they were looking for consultants to plan how to get from Dykeman Street to Yonkers along the water, if possible. And a number of us were there at the meetings. John Benfatti, who you might know him as one of the prior bike coordinators from DOT, we were in agreement that it should be along the water. The Amtrak bridge across the Spuyten Duyvil has enough room. They have 1 track on it, and it's wide enough for 2 tracks. They could actually put a bike path on that. And the infrastructure is pretty much done all the way up to the bridge, almost, just along the water at Inwood Park. And so that would be preferable. The way it goes now, you have to hike your bike up and over this green bridge that goes over the Amtrak tracks into Inwood Park. It's not well designed at all. The green bridge there needs ramping on both ends. Also, if you get on the pathway after you're off the Green Bridge to get up to the Henry Hudson Bridge, you go and you lose a lot of elevation, and then you basically cannot bike unless you're Herculean. You can't bike up. Sorry?
That's my 3-year-old who just escaped.
Oh,
Keep
okay.
going.
Okay. Yeah, a better way to do it, it wouldn't be much work, would be from the end of the Green Bridge to go on a diagonal to the left lane of the northbound Henry Hudson. And in fact, you know, considering that a lane of the Brooklyn Bridge and a lane of the Queensboro Bridge are given over to bicyclists, I know from history that there's a lot of empty laneage along the northbound Henry Hudson, and one lane could be dedicated to bicyclists from Dyckman Street, from the end of the current Greenway, all the way across the bridge, because to make the existing pathway is probably only about 4 feet wide. You know, it's not big enough for bicyclists. They tell you to get off of your bicycle if you want to cross that bridge. Giving a lane would be so much better. And I think that, you know, there's less traffic on that bridge than there is on the Queensboro or the Brooklyn Bridge. And that's about it, I think. Thank you.
Thank you, Maggie. I mean, is there anything you can comment on and all that? I know most of that is not DOT territory.
The point about Inwood Park is really a great one. And, you know, I'll just say, as somebody who's been doing this for years, that is something that should be continued to talk about at a community level, because it really is, you know, like, but the stresses on Broadway Bridge that we all know and understand, like, that's actually, you could really kind of open up a lot of great bicycle network if we could get MTA BT, I believe that's MTA Bridges and Tunnels, coming to the board and talking about some of the stuff realistically.
So you're saying not,
yeah.
So not the Amtrak bridge, the other way that Maggie described, you're
Well,
saying?
it all involves Amtrak. You basically just went like,
True.
Sorry, like Maggie, just, you understand this, I bet, better than I do. But like, you basically just did a run of all the hardest agencies to work with. You had you had coastal work in there, you had Amtrak, and you had an authority that's based on toll revenue that has some great stuff about it in the Power Broker. So like that, you're talking about running the gauntlet, but it doesn't mean that people shouldn't be talking about it. And you're absolutely right that the numbers, and we publish these numbers, the numbers are only going up as we complete more sections. So I don't really have a lot to say because it doesn't really involve DOT.
I can tell you that right after COVID hit and I needed to go to the local bike shop, there was a line, you know, like a block, you know, for people trying to get into that bike shop. And that went on for many weeks.
It's still going on. You can't even, bikes are all back ordered. Can't buy bikes right now.
Actually, we're going to come back to committee member Edith Prentice right now. And Edith, just don't forget to unmute, as I have done like 4 times.
You get me after Edith. I had my hand up for quite some time.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize that was a new hand. And,
yeah, it was.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay.
He had his hand up, but I think that's an old hand.
Okay. So Edith, and then let's go to Omar. Actually, Omar, why don't you go ahead, and then Edith, you just get ready to unmute after that.
All right. You know, I want to thank Maggie for her work and diligence, as well as Demetrius and his work. I'm familiar with a lot of the stuff that they've done. You know, full disclosure, I was part of Grand Fondo New York for 6 years. I worked with them very closely. And then after that, I worked with Rafa, the clothing brand, as well. So I've led countless group rides throughout this whole city, especially up through our neighborhoods. I think that what's extremely challenging about CB12 and planning here is that we are a major artery and conduit to New Jersey. Then we are a major conduit to the Bronx in terms of the Washington Bridge and the Broadway Bridge, and everything kind of collapses on us. So when we think about bike infrastructure, I always think about it as in the same way as I think about traffic patterns, is that we can't think about things in an isolated way, right? Like it all has to come together, and that requires multiple agencies. The other part to it is our geography. Unfortunately, we have less road space to kind of maneuver all this traffic than some other boards do because of the amount of parks space that we have, land, physical parkland in this community board district is probably one of the highest percentages, I want to say, or the highest percentage in the city. So all those factors, when taking into account how do we best navigate the road with cars and bikes, it starts to expose the challenges that we have up here. And as great as the frustrations are for cyclists in this area, I always keep in mind how challenging and daunting the task at hand is to actually balance it. Because if, say, I love our parks and I don't want them to ever go away, but hypothetically speaking, if we had less park space, we'd have more space to maneuver all this traffic, but we don't. So Ted and Kimberly and everyone else at the agencies, I want to thank you guys for even taking this this forum on and listening to all the issues that are here. Thanks, Jim. I just want to say that there's a lot of other aspects in here that are at play, and I just want everyone to also think about those things when we think about best solutions for our issues that we have up here. That's all.
Thank you, Elmore. Edith, I see you're ready to go now.
I like to raise the issue of the east side of the bridge and the condition of the surface.
Which bridge?
The Broadway Bridge.
Okay.
With the there's broken cement. There is plywood. There's plywood that's not properly beveled. There is no ped ramp to get onto the bridge coming from the south. These are a number of issues that really need to be addressed for pedestrians, for cyclists, for everyone.
Just responding to that, I think we can, we agreed to come back with some more information about the latest on the Broadway Bridge. And normally Lyle would probably have that information, but he's not here tonight, so we'll have to come back.
Kimberly, maybe let's talk also about whether it's time to have a Broadway Bridge update. Selfishly speaking, I think I'm behind one update that the rest of the committee might have received, but and then because I think what Edith has just said is a lot, and it's a lot of, it's big and the project is big, and now we have the bike component. So let's see if, come back to me if that's, an option to maybe just add that to an agenda.
The condition of the sidewalk on the west side, which has been an ongoing issue with Columbia University and Columbia Presbyterian, and the work that's being done on the L, and the absolutely appallable light condition on those sidewalks. It is extremely dangerous.
Okay. Thank you, Edith. And one thing, I'm just going to say one more thing for the record, and then I think we have one more question in the attendee for Allegra that we'll go back to. But I don't think we had a discussion and a presentation from a resident some months ago about what I think Maggie had touched upon, about how the bike lane on Dykeman west of Broadway now doesn't exist for a block. So in a sense, you've sort of cut the connection going to the west side to the Greenway, because you can't, that's where the bike lane is, and then there's no bike lane there between Broadway and Seaman. And so somebody came, a community resident came and presented on an idea to have a protected bike lane on Riverside, on the westbound side of Riverside going west from Broadway, and have it be protected. And wasn't something that was a reso item, but it was sort of an interesting idea of how you would contend with the lack of bike lane now on Dykeman, not to mention that on the Seaman to the river section, to the Greenway section, that's usually like often double parked and whatnot. So anyway, and I think that went back to you, that proposal went back to you, and you guys were going to sort of react to it. And I guess what I'm saying here is, if you can react to the idea of like, we don't have a bike lane that's continuous on Dykeman anymore.
Well, we have that. We're looking at it right now. It does involve some sort of either loss of vehicular lane that we would have to analyze, or loss of parking. It is in our queue of stuff to deal with, and we hope to be back to you guys sometime soon in the future.
Thanks, Ted. With that, let's finish up with Allegra. I think you have, oops. Yeah, there you go.
Very much, Debbie. Just quickly, I wanted to make sure that, do we have contact for Ted Wright and Kimberly Rancourt in case we have further questions for them? Another thing is, often as we're doing construction work, like dedicated bike lanes get, put off to the side so that they can have work done with them. The next big one I can think of is probably that Hudson River Greenway stretch from the bridge to Dykeman Street. It's going to need major work. It'll get shut down. People get pushed onto the streets. When that's done, can the community board or can DOT make a commitment to have safe, like those orange and white plastic barrier things, so that people who are not able, like my children, who I don't want to street ride, so that we can still use those connections, even though the permanent connection is being worked on? The temporary lane, can it actually be a real temporary lane where it's separated from the cars?
Contractors are supposed to provide, if it's a protected lane, they're supposed to provide some sort of temporary protected lane. Sometimes they get out of it, so please bring it to our attention.
That definitely didn't happen just for the Cherry Walk this last year.
That's Parks. Parks can do whatever they want on their property. You guys need to talk to Parks about that. I get all these calls about this stuff.
But Parks, when they shut down something, the Greenway, that connection is severed, forcing bikes onto DOT property.
Oh yeah.
So would it be Parks or DOT that would make that protected path connection, temporary connection? Because
we would have to work with Parks. I mean, you're talking about eliminating, if we were to do that, we would have to eliminate maybe a mile, maybe even 2 miles of parked vehicles along Riverside. And that's not something that we can just get an email from Parks 2 weeks ahead of time. Like, I know I'm putting it on them, but that's frustrating to me. You know, like,
need to have 6 months, and then you can get on. I'm sure that we can. Well, how much heads up do you need?
I mean, I think when you guys see these things, you guys should be telling them, no, you can't do it until we have a safe passage, or there's no way it's okay. You know, and then they are forced to deal with it. Oftentimes they just put it on us, and now we're in an uncomfortable situation. Imagine if my presentation tonight was coming for a temporary bike lane along Broadway, where we're removing 400 parking spaces. How would that have gone tonight? You know,
the crowd you have tonight, I would say you'd gone over pretty well.
It wouldn't be the crowd that we have tonight. Let me tell you that. It would be the crowd that has businesses along the corridor.
Okay,
you know?
Point well taken. So I will follow up, and then 2 last teeny tiny things. One, so I appreciate the fact that you do the bike counts, like you led with saying, oh, we had 60% increased ridership. And I know I can find those ridership numbers on the DOT webpage for bikes. Debbie, I wonder if we couldn't expect the same from Port Authority with respect to the George Washington Bridge bike usage, because I find it pretty hard to believe that pretty much bike usage across the entire country, including New York City, went up by 60%, but it was unchanged on the George Washington Bridge. So that's one thing I would like to ask for from Port Authority. And then the second thing is with respect to the previous commenter's question about the sidewalk on the west side of Broadway, outside of Columbia, Allen, and the Bakerfield. They have broken that sidewalk up this last week. They're definitely doing work on it. So maybe it's something we can follow up on next month. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Allegra.
Just to your first point, you definitely have my contact information. You can always reach out to our office.
Thanks.
Proper protocol is to go through Kim. I'm not allowed to talk to people.
All right. Well, thank you, DOT. Thank you for all the attendees who came out tonight to share this feedback about the street's condition with our bikes infrastructure. Yeah, I think, Ted, it looks like maybe people have not gone to sleep in your world, so I understand you may need to bow out.
It was actually the 2-year-old. That's even worse. So I got to run. He keeps on sneaking up behind me.
Thank you so much for your time and for being here tonight.
All right.
This was really great. Thank you.
Please, I look forward to more correspondence, you guys. Thanks for the passion. Love it.
Bye. All right. So I'm just trying to think. We have one new business item that we've gotten some pretty detailed feedback, and there were a lot of community residents who raised it. And so I just wanted to touch upon that. And I think we have, is it Mr. Hearson here for that? We were contacted, and Ebenezer was contacted by a group of residents for the upper roadway of Riverside going north from 157th. And I'll have to be corrected if I've gotten that wrong. So we've had obviously a lot of conversation over the past year or two about like the middle roadway and other parts of Riverside around there. But this was in relation to the upper roadway and safety conditions there and some conditions that they're dealing with. And I could share that material with the committee. I didn't get it out before the event, but if somebody is here from that group and is able to talk, do we have anybody? Mike here? Yeah.
And it's actually not Mike Herson. I'm sorry, I'm just using his computer. It's Jody.
I thought so. I was like, okay.
Sorry about that.
So if you could take up to 2 minutes, just giving the committee a better idea of what's happening and the petition that you put together, and I'll get those materials out to the committee after the meeting. But I just did want to make people aware that this had bubbled up.
Okay, no problem. I live at 870 Riverside Drive, and thank you very much for giving me the time to speak on behalf of the residents of Upper Riverside Drive East. And this particular area, just so that I can get you guys familiar with it, is a narrow one-way roadway from 158 to 165. It's bordered on both sides by sidewalk, and the lower Riverside Drive East is the other side of the little greenway or parkway that comes in between the two roadways. And the sidewalk on the park side, going from 158 to 165, is in horrendous shape. Huge gullies, cavities, and in some places completely non-existent sidewalk, making it very, very difficult for people to navigate that sidewalk, almost impossible in certain areas. We have people with wheelchairs, we have people handicapped, we have people with walkers, and it makes it almost impossible, and it's very, very dangerous. Then compounding the problem is that we do not have any loading or unloading zones along this stretch of roadway. So every car and every large truck parks along this sidewalk, further compounding, as you can imagine, the safety issues. And then on top of that, the petition speaks to the fact that we really need to have some safety calming methods reevaluated in the area, because we have a few speed bumps, but they're very small. People fly over them. There was at one time stop signs, I understand, along the roadway, but they've been hit by trucks and cars and things like that as they maneuver the sidewalks. So it's ultimately, I think it's an area that we really need to have some community help and some assistance in how we move forward with it. Just as a little history, and I'll make it really quick, about a year ago, the residents, there were about 30 of us that actively got together and developed an association. And we've been working very, very closely with the New York City Parks Department, because we had a huge rodent and garbage problem in that park land. Since in the past year, with the park's help and a lot of help from Jennifer Hoppe, we have raked, painted, swept, removed about 70 bags of garbage. We've cultivated about 20 tree beds, planted 400 bulbs and perennial plants. And in the process of doing that, that's where all these issues came up with the residents. And what we would love to do is have you take a look at this area, or the designated agencies, have the sidewalk area replaced, have appropriate loading and unloading zones designated along the roadway, to really look at some safety calming methods, to also look at the crossing intersections along the way for better crossing walks, ramping for handicapped people, because it really doesn't exist, and also lighting. And I'd love to just throw in as a big dream, lantern lighting or something that's aesthetically pleasing. But at this point, I think it's more just bringing it to your attention and asking you for some help. I'm done.
Jody, thank you for bringing this to our attention. I guess, Kimberly, I see you're still with us. Is there anything that you're able to react to in the short term? I know that you have connected directly with the resident groups, on the other side of Riverside in 157th, and I maybe we connect you directly, but and if there's something that we need to put this on our agenda in the future for being as a reso item, we can also do that. But is there anything that you can speak to about like scope for reevaluating traffic calming that's been put there in the past, or crosswalks, if this is on the list for getting cleaned up crosswalks?
And sidewalk, Debbie.
And
Definitely.
sidewalk.
Yeah, we really need this. And loading zones, because the problem is these huge FedEx, UPS, Fresh Direct, they park on the sidewalk. And, the pictures that I sent you, I mean, sometimes we have 4 cars and 3 large trucks, and they're, what's really causing the damage to the sidewalks. And we really need a place where the trucks and cars park and where the residents can walk. It's really dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate all of that input, and I hear your concerns and would be happy to look into it. I don't have any direct response to give at this time, but certainly we're always willing to have conversations about these kinds of issues and see what we can do and what we can address.
All
So
right.
it's
So
bring it up as another agenda item or just send us.
Right. So I think what I'm going to suggest then, Kimberly, is that I will share with you what Jody had submitted. Lots of pictures, petition, description. I will send that to you. I will get you guys connected as needed. And then Kimberly, if you could just get back to me and we'll discuss whether we need to bring it as a formal agenda item at a future meeting or how we want to proceed from there. I do have Maria Luna from the community board who has a question. Oops. Sorry, let me just get her set up to talk. Okay, Maria, you should be good now. All right. Yeah, I think you're unmuted now, Maria. Give it a try. That's weird. She's unmuted.
No, I'm sorry.
Oh, there you are.
No, I really can't.
I can hear you now.
Nothing.
Do you want me to come back to you?
Okay, you can put. No,
All right.
no.
All right.
I can't hear.
All right. We're going to come back to you. Just hang on. I have Nicole. Do you want to just jump in now? Nicole, you should be good to go now. Maybe it's not our people who are trying to talk. Nicole, you're not muted.
Oh, hello?
Yeah.
Hi, sorry. All right, this is my first meeting, sorry.
No problem.
I have a question about the street. It's in front of the precinct on 151st between Amsterdam and Convent.
Is that CB12?
No,
Can't
that's
hear.
not.
No, it's not. Not our district.
You're just south of us.
Oh, no.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
I think you're CB11. But thanks for joining us.
Oh,
Fine.
no problem.
Maria, do you want to give a try to speaking again? Okay. All right. So, all right. With that, if anybody has, it's 9:15. Does anybody have anything else either on old or new business from the committee? Anything I've missed on old business that you wanted to hear about?
Maria passes.
Okay. Thanks, Jim. All right. Well, if not, how about a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All right. This meeting is adjourned at 9:17. Thank you to Leo tonight for taking notes. Best of luck to Omar this week. It's a big week. We'll see you, in 2 months or so. And thanks for everybody that came out tonight.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Debbie. I'll send those notes soon.
Thank you. Good night.
All right,
you.
great. Appreciate everybody tonight. Bye-bye.
Have a good night.